Hello there, and welcome to your very first Tutami reading lesson. It will be my responsibility to enlighten you by examining this test through the eyes of a test creator, rather than just a test taker. So why don't we just get started? As you know, the current SAT wasn't always so core-aligned. From September 2005 to January 2016, the reading section was chock full of sentence completions. That turned the old SAT from a test of your abilities to a test of how many words can you memorize or cram into your head. Not many students were fans of regurgitating these alien words, and thus opted for the slightly less vocabulary-intensive ACT test, one with significantly fewer vocabulary words. Since March of 2016, the SAT was totally revamped in efforts to be more core-aligned with what you've learned in school, in order to better predict how you'll perform in college. But the truth is, College Board was slowly losing business to the ACT and decided to remove some of the unpopular aspects of its test, such as the sentence completions and short passages. By making the current SAT more similar to the ACT, and by partnering with Khan Academy, College Board hopes to better compete. After all, it is a business, right?
Tinko, I hear that despite the changes that the SAT reading is still harder than the ACT. Is this true?
That's not necessarily true. The current SAT removed a lot of the harder vocabulary, but still kept most of the harder reasoning questions. Because many of you have already registered for our SAT product, I can only assume that you took a diagnostic test and felt the SAT, despite the harder logic, is more suitable for you. Once you learn the techniques for each, either test can be pretty easy. But overall, Lauren, I would say you're right. The current SAT is more of a logic and deduction test, and thus can be seen as a slightly less straightforward test. On the SAT, you'll see more questions that deal with determining what's stated or implied in a passage and being able to apply it to similar situations. Many of the questions on the SAT will focus on citing textual evidence and informational graphics. Sometimes we're asked to support our reasoning or logic for an answer, and at times may involve understanding or interpreting a table or graph, like this one. These questions usually take more time to think over. Thus, you can say the SAT is a slightly more deductive test. This can also be seen from the fact that we're given, on average, more time to complete each question on the SAT, 1 minute, 15 seconds. The ACT, on the other hand, is more of a time-based test. Its questions are generally more direct, but at the same time more randomized, which means that sometimes the answer for question 18 is in lines 86 through 93. And then all of a sudden, the answer for question 19 jumps back to line 31. Then question 20 jumps down to 48 to 56. The ACT is definitely not as sequential as the SAT. But overall, the ACT can be considered more of a direct test with a preponderance of its questions sounding like based on, according to, and indicates that. Questions that require simple answers that can be directly found in the passage. The only caveat is the ACT is more of a race against time test with less than 52.5 seconds to locate each answer. So to answer your question, Lauren, the SAT is slightly more logical, but logic can be taught. The ACT is more like finding Waldo, and speed is also something that can be taught. So you can't say one is easier than the other. They're just different. Over the next several weeks, it will be my job to dissect the SAT for you through the eyes of an actual test creator. This way you'll have the latest and most up-to-date information.
Tinko, since the SAT changes every 10 years or so, why would we need to look out for new updates and changes?
Generally speaking, Billy, College Board loves to adhere to a uniform bell curve, one where the average student is able to score between 505 to 510 on their SAT and PSATs. It will be College Board's job to make sure the current SAT adheres to these guidelines. If we were in year 6, 7, or 8 of 10 for the old SAT, I would say the test is pretty mature and that the question, types, patterns, frequencies, and levels of difficulties are most easily predictable. Since this is year 1 of 10, the first 1 to 2 years, you'll probably see a lot of change from month to month in terms of the question frequency, okay? They'll continue to do this until the administrators at College Board feel comfortable with the content of the new test and that the bell curve is pretty stabilized. So as soon as these changes occur, I'll be able to update our lessons and our videos, okay? So stay tuned. Now that we have a really good general overview about the SAT reading, let's get down to the nitty-gritty in our next lesson and talk about all the questions and tricks and passage types that you're going to see on your next SAT.